It is time to expand minds through movies, TV, sports, and flicks. It is time to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. It is time for the Captain Talks Flicks.
The Captain Talk Flicks.
Welcome to the Captain Talk Flicks podcast. I'm your host, the Captain Cortez, aka Mr. Love, and this is where we talk flicks. And ladies and gentlemen, this past week, I went back to the great game, the Wilderness of Mirrors. I went back to the CIA, with the CIA this past week. Let me get to that. First couple things. I want to give a big shout out to Michigan, my home state. Across the whole EIF family, we get a lot of plays of all our artists and podcasts. We want to thank you for playing our stuff because we are born and bred in the state of Michigan. Me and the rest of the crew have been all over Lower Peninsula, all in businesses and casinos and parks and games and sports, all over all these past years. And we want to thank you for listening to our art. Appreciate it because we were born and raised in the state. So thanks for listening. Appreciate it, guys. And additionally, this episode is brought to you by the album called From Level 50 with Love. By yours, showing me the Captain Che Cortez. It's me rapping over Cynthia type beats in my own unique, spacey way. I want to lift up your consciousness. That's what I'm trying to do. So if you want to hear some rap, hip hop you've never heard before, put it below, check it out. Now, let's go to the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, this past week, like I said, I went back to the CIA. The CIA Fusion Cell, to be exact. The CIA in New York operating on United States of America territory, investigating and stopping foreign nationals from disrupting our way of life. So I visited Colin and Bill. Yeah, I know their names this week. I remember them this week. You get to see them in action. Now, this past week, there's a gentleman from Belarus who flew into the NY and was trying to do some shady things. I mean, he was doing shady things. It was up to Bill and Colin to foil their plot, and they did that. So on this particular episode, the guy was part of some terrorist cell from overseas, and he came in, doing stuff, adoption and stuff. They're like, what's going on here? What's doing adoption? And so they weren't really sure what was happening there. And so they had to try to figure all that out. Now, I've been down the rabbit hole of terrorism, counterterrorism, espionage, and you name it over like a decade plus. And I read a lot of articles, a lot of podcasts, but I've not heard about, criminal organizations using adoption, businesses as a way to gain money for their illicit, things. It's crazy. Now, I know some criminal organizations, they have a line of code. They just won't mess with kids or women. They're off, they're regular laymen. They won't even go there. Some have that code. A lot do have that code where they just don't touch those humans. Only that criminal element. These guys not so much. These guys taking advantage of, just the innocent bystander, which is really messed up. And a wonderful thing too, like my day to day, most humans I meet are phenomenal humans. They're great people. But there are elements out in society that do, exist that are kind of in this vibe. And so when you navigate the world, you kind of got to be careful. You got to just watch out. So yeah, good episode, great show. In the show, we see that Colin and Bill are kind of bonding more. They're getting rapport. Now, unfortunately, Bill, is, trying to gain trust rapport so he can, find out, is there a mole? Who the mole is? I mean, he's gaining rapport with, ulterior motive. Like I told you before, I didn't know how to do all that because I don't operate like that. But, unfortunately, I think what's going to happen, though, is that Bill's going to start liking Colin. It's going to be some difficult choice I have to make in the future. Now, a lot of the books I've read about, real life cases, I think Hansen, I think, that's Hansen, the guy, they're thinking Hansen. I think they said a young guy to get Hansen. I think it's Hansen. Which one? I'm pretty sure it's Hansen. It's one of them to gain his trust and figure out if he's spying or not. But in the process, I guess he really started to like the guy, respect the guy in some weird way. So you hear a lot of times when these guys go to try to take people down, they get embedded in the culture with the person. A lot of times they really start to like the individual because a lot of these guys that do these things are very charismatic characters. A lot of people, women and men included, that do shady stuff do happen to have a lot of charisma. Maybe that's part of the way they can do these things. You have to have a lot of charisma. Are you going to follow someone that doesn't have charisma? You're going to follow someone that talks like this? Hi, could you just, no one follows like that. I think a lot of these guys that do those, quotation shady things, just are a lot of really charismatic people. So if you're around them, you probably just can't help but start to like these guys, even though they do some very shady, horrible things. So in this episode, we get to see that dynamic play. Now, this is not a shady guy, it's just a CIA dude, Colin. but Bill does have to kind of embed himself and get in good with them. At the end of the episode, you know, the Colin and the lady from the office, you know, they go out for beers and they invite Bill, and, you know, Bill shows up. You know, he's always part of the crew. Now, at my jobs I've had in the past, for a long time, I would never do that. But, you know, on the later end of that, when I was with the crews of humans working, I did go ahead and, you know, hung out with them and had some food and drinks and, you know, and chill with the workers. And doing that, I wouldn't know, but I had a good time. It was cool to get to know these humans and how they think, how they act, and, you know, break bread with them, you know, question mark. You know, Bill's doing this obviously, but he's also doing it because he's trying to get in there, you know. But anyways, this show is pretty solid. There's a little nuanced details about the trade craft of spying that I've picked up on over the years I've read. And so, oh yeah, it makes sense. Little small details. Now, it's not like a book where a book can go into really solid details, but there's little small nuanced details in the show up to this point. It's just, oh yeah, I know that little detail. It's a really good detail. I've read about that in real life. So a lot of these shows I watch, FBI, the other shows that are based on real life, there are small, minute details. If you go down the rabbit hole of studying for real, you'll see the details in the shows. I know a lady, and she's heavily versed in medical stuff. She worked at some kind of medical facility. She reads a lot of medical stuff. She writes stories about medical. She went to her shows in medical, and she writes a lot. And then she would tell me, like, you know, the reel that's in the show. She'd tell me about some show, and the detail that they grabbed from real life to put in a show was a small thing you only knows if you knew the world. And because she knows the medical world really well, she would say, oh yeah, that's a real thing. I said, oh really, that's right. And it just shows the writers that write a lot of these shows are really well versed. Now, as I've gone the rabbit hole of espionage, spying, counterterrorism, I'm not super smart, but I do know a lot more than I used to know. And so I can see the little details of, oh, that's a real thing there. And a lot of times in shows that I would do when I was just learning these things, to see some of the shows, like, is that real? And I'll go and Google it. I've talked about on the podcast before, like where you watch TV or the movies and you see something to kind of Google it. It wasn't just spying, but in general. You see something new, is that real? And you just Google it. So over the years, as I watch these espionage shows and documentaries, whatever I'm watching, I go further research on these things and look deep into it. And then when you watch these movies and shows, a lot of times they're showing like real stuff. Like, oh, this is real. This is real. Like, oh my gosh. Now, if you really study the world of espionage and spycraft, some of the things that actually happen are the most unbelievable things you could even think of. Like, you think they're writing it like for TV or something, but some of the things I've read that have, like, are you serious? There's a plot to get Castro, and they wanted like to make his beard fall off. Like, someone sat around the office and said, yo, we're gonna have this, you know, this plan. We're gonna get, you know, Castro's beard to fall off. This is absolutely crazy. There's a dude that used to work for the Spy Museum a long time ago, and he wrote a book, I think is about some of the wacky spy stories, if I remember correctly. I might never remember this correctly. But he used to be the historian dude, ran the museum. And I think he did like have crazy, unknown stories. I can't remember the name of the book. I can't remember the name of it. So I'll put the link below if I can find it. But it is a book about, you know, various weird kind of, I think, plots. I think 1, 2, there's a plot like to nuke the moon or something. I remember. It was a long time ago. But the dude did write a book about these things. And if I find it, I'll find it, I'm sure. And I'll put the link in the notes below. I haven't read it yet, but I've been wanting to read that for a while because a lot of crazy weird things go down in the spycraft. So anyway, CIA, the TV show. Yeah, it's great. About the great game. How can you not love it if you love spycraft? If you don't like spycraft, it's good. I mean, Dick Wolf's doing it. Come on. So thanks for joining me. This is Clues Podcast. I appreciate you guys. And until next time, we'll see. Make it so. Jean-Luc Picard. Till next time, it's Captain.
The Captain Talks.